Oh. To chapter 2. Chapter 3 is history. there. Hello. I'm sorry. Give them a couple more minutes, see if anybody else goes. Oh, Rachel. Yeah, give you better than that. Start. I had to write your name. Man. So is everybody ready? Not have to come back for these linguistic lectures? Almost there. Well, you know what today? Okay. Please be cool. So that let you know. All right, well, we probably got a quarter, so off we go. Be sure you get your name on the slide or the sign-in sheet. And today we're going to finish up wrapping up pragmatics. Let's see, when we're done, I'm going to give you either question, or if you're one of the couple of people who haven't done the evaluation, you'll probably have class time that you can do it. So I don't know who it is. I got pretty good results. I got 86%, but I would just like to have 100%. If everybody's opinion matters. My other class not doing too good, like 46. We're going to go start writing in letters. Nonetheless, intro to pragmatics. Wrap up. You haven't done it already, please do the course evaluation. There's only a couple people there, so most of you have done it. But to you, I say thank you. And the final exam is going to be here. What time is the final exam going to be, Christina? 10, right? It's not going to be at 12:15. Is that right, Cynthia? How about you, Isabel? Those are all the three names that I had trouble with all semester. I just wanted to show you I'm trainable. And I can get there. Okay, so 10 o'clock right here. And don't forget, it'll be on Tuesday morning. 10 o'clock. We'll be done before class would normally start. Any questions about the exam? Pretty, it's going to look a lot like the other one, except the topics will be different. It's going to cover syntax, it's going to cover semantics, and it's going to cover just a tiny bit of pragmatics. But even then, I just want you to still look at pragmatics. I knew I did. Okay, so it's not comprehensive. We're just going to get stuff that we have had since the last exam. Okay, and you've also seen what's on it because I gave you the practice exam, which looks almost the same, just different. Pragmatics, as Sebastian said, context is beautiful. Context plays a role in just about everything. It plays a role in semantics because sometimes we've got a word that has more than one dictionary meaning. But when we talk about pragmatics, we are really driving into context. Context is the thing that really drives them. That says it right there. And it says it on the other slide that I put in just recently. And again, it says the effect of context, studies in which context contributes. I guess I didn't even put that. Maybe I didn't change. Oh, there we go. Study of speaker meaning. So we've talked about speaker meaning and linguistic meaning. Linguistic being the dictionary denotation kind of stuff. Then we've also talked about speaker and linguistic reference. Are we talking about something very specific that's obvious, or is it something that's more context specific? Here comes the princess. Is it Princess Anne from England, or is it somebody you don't like who's snooty and you call her a princess anyway? Context, a beautiful thing. Here's the thing for you to really remember. And as I mentioned, I was reading this book over the weekend, and every chapter ends with about the same sentence: how more gets communicated than is said. I read a book on Spanish pragmatics, and basically they said it's the difference between what is spoken and what is said. Spoken meaning the words that were used, said meaning the message. All of this is the same kind of stuff. And also we have to take into account many times the only way this communication works is if we come from similar backgrounds or we are in a similar space, right? So that if I point to that, we all know that that was here when I showed up in 2008. And it has never, ever changed. But now we all know that is what we're talking about. We're in the same space. Shared experience, really cultural things, and language kinds of things play into this a lot. Particularly when we start to talk about our first area, and that being implicature. What do you think implicature means? What word comes to mind when I say implicature? Huh? Implication if you wanted a noun, and if you wanted a verb, it would be imply. We are going to be looking at some things that show that oftentimes what is communicated is more than what was said, is different than what was said. And that's going to be the point in time when we have to start looking at this language and figuring out what does the speaker imply. Because in many cases, it's not going to be the answer or the sentence we would have expected. So, famous guy here is a guy named Grice. He came up with some maxims, and he came up with something called the Cooperative Principle. I know you've already read it. We'll talk about that a little bit, look at some more examples. The other half of pragmatics that we could look at is speech act theory. I'm just going to bring you some definitions about this, basically locutionary, illocutionary, and perlocutionary acts, so that you know what they are. But the idea is implicature and the fact that we do things with words. So let's look at implicature first. Again, this kind of goes right back to those definitions that I've been talking about. And utterance implies a proposition, maybe one or more propositions, that is not part of the utterance. What is spoken, what the utterance is, may very well be different than what is said, the proposition or the statement. And in many cases, it just doesn't follow from the utterance, right? I will say things, and as long as we're in the same space, we know what we're talking about, we can kind of interpret these. Across languages, it doesn't work very well. And it's one of the areas we probably don't spend nearly enough time with our students to get them to really understand. We spend a lot of time on words and vocabulary, on how to read. We talk about how to write, how to listen and speak. We sometimes miss this whole idea here. And so we find a lot of messages get miscommunicated. It denotes, implicature denotes the act of figuring out the meaning, what the speaker is implying or suggesting, oftentimes because they're saying something else. We'll look at some examples. Here's one. Alan, are you going to Paul's party? And Barb says, I have to work. What did she imply? What did she say? She didn't say she was going to the party or she wasn't. What did she imply though? No. She implies no. This happens all the time. Sometimes it drives me nuts, but I ask a question, I expect some kind of an answer, you get something that's totally off base. In this case, it is. But given that we're all English speakers, we can look at that, and if somebody told us that, we know the answer was no. Now, one of our students, however, may not. So what does the response imply? It doesn't say no, but it certainly, well, it doesn't utter no, but it says no. How about this one? Some of the boys were at the party. What does that imply? Some of the boys were at the party. That's pretty simple. What's it imply? Well, did you want to be at that party? Oh, exactly. Now, some of the boys were at the party. Now, we can play these kinds of games. We do that all the time when we talk to people. We use word games to kind of hide what we really mean. But in this case, some of the boys were at the party, which implies that not everybody was there, right? And that one's pretty clear and fairly straightforward. You might hear it very quickly and think, okay, everybody was there, but that's not what they said. In fact, they said quite the opposite. So not all of the boys were there. Here's one of my favorites. How much longer will you be? The husband says to the wife. And the wife says, fix yourself a drink. What does that imply, Arpad? Are you married? Oh, no. Okay. Well, what do you think this implies? This is good marital lessons. She's going to be there a while. So it implies what? Mix yourself a drink because it may be a while. And then finally, my absolute favorite, I think you may have seen this in the book. Uncle Chester is coming to dinner. Mary says I better hide the liquor. What does she imply? Now, this is the case where we need to know Uncle Chester, because this could mean several different things. What do you think it means, Diana? He could be an alcoholic, so we better hide the liquor so he doesn't drink us out of house and home. True. What else could it mean? Ariana? He's an alcoholic, so we better hide it so he doesn't drink it. Or, Kendra, what do you think? What might it be? Anybody? Yes, ma'am. He's going to take advantage how? Okay, taking it or using it. So, yep, that could be it. Kind of along the lines of he's an alcoholic. If he shows up, he sees liquor, he's going to drink it. Yeah. There's another one, though. What if Uncle Chester has all the family money? And he is a teetotaler. Everybody know what a teetotaler is? That's somebody who doesn't drink, only drinks tea, teetotaler. And he expects you to be one too. And if he's going to be putting out his money in the will, he doesn't want you to be drinkers. That could happen. We better hide that so he doesn't know that we drink. Nonetheless, we have to know who Uncle Chester is. If we know he's an alcoholic or we know he drinks a lot, we hide it so that he doesn't. And if he doesn't like us doing it, we hide it so he doesn't know. Closet drinkers. These are just a few examples. So let's look a little bit more specifically at something that is called Bryce's Cooperative Principle. Bryce's Cooperative Principle, we rely on Implicature, and it's oftentimes based on these principles that describe how we communicate effectively in conversation.
It's essentially an idea that says the two interlocutors or the two people who are talking cooperate by following certain rules and expecting the other person to follow similar rules. Now you can see where this could become a cultural issue because the rules may be different from one place to another. But in very basic terms, we're going to see that there are four maxims that build the cooperative principle. We employ it, we do it unconsciously. We don't sit around and think, how am I going to follow this rule? How is he going to follow that rule? It isn't. We unconsciously do it. And so there's a lot of culture. But it's how we interpret utterances, particularly when something other than what was spoken is implied. So there's lots of things that we can do. You're looking weird, getting very weird responses from people. Gives us an answer that may be now, cooperative principle important. Describes how we communicate, and that's done by the fact that we consciously thinking it through. We use these rules to help us understand what the person is talking about, and that's particularly true when it's not just the words are the message. We have to rely on implication. So, people expect the maxims, the four maxims that we're going to talk about, they expect them to be observed. They are used for us to filter our interpretation of what the other person says. Kind of used as a filter for how we're going to say something, particularly if we're kind of hiding something. And they are really relied upon for us to have effective communication. I was thinking when I was looking at this morning, I should add a fourth thing on there. And the fact that when we purposefully avoid following the rules, we kind of have to understand that the other person is doing that. And that gives us another reason why we have to understand what they imply. Okay? So here's one of my favorites. This is the Armour corollary to Grice's maxims. When I was a manager, for years and years and years, I would ask somebody who was working for me, is this done? 2 words will suffice, yes or no. Now with yes, oftentimes they will say yes. Is it done? And it should be no. Then I found that the longer the response to a yes or no question, the less likely it is that it's the answer that you want. They will bury it in so many words that they hope you don't recognize that, no, it's not done. Now, that may just be me being cynical, but I watched it for years and it always was the same thing. So here are the maxims, and it kind of relates to the first one, which is quantity. Be as informative as is required, but only say as much as needed, as much as is needed. Say only as much as we really require to be informative. And so the answer, when it's something you don't want to hear, it's buried in a lot of extra words. Have you ever heard this? I'll be using a bad word here for a minute, but there's a rule that says if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, you baffle them with BS. I didn't even use a bad word. Okay, so can't dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with BS, that kind of falls in here. It also falls in with others, quality. Now, we expect that the other person is going to give us the information that we need, not more, not less. On quality, we're going to assume or expect that the speaker is saying something that's true, that he's not or she's not out there actually just flat out lying to us. We expect it to be true. Now, we've also got something that is called relation. And for me, relation is an okay word, but I kind of like the word relevance as even better. But relation is what Grice came up with. And that is the speaker's contribution should be relevant to the conversation that we're talking about. Right? You ask somebody, how much does the hotel cost? And they start talking about yesterday's dinner. That's kind of like not relevant. It's not what you wanted to know. I'm a bad person, so I do this with my wife a lot. That's not the question that I asked you. Oh, she hates that. It's a wonder she stayed married to me all this time. Anyway, relation. Speaker's contribution should be relevant. And then finally, the relationship should, the conversation or what the speaker says should be clear and unambiguous. These two are the corollary issues that I usually run into, where the more words you get, you only need one. It's kind of a bad signal. So these are the maxims. Quantity will be as informative, but only as informative as we need to. So we're not going to bury the facts in a bunch of extra stuff. Quality is we're going to be speaking the truth. Relation is that it's going to be relevant, and manner, the fact that we are going to be clear and unambiguous. It would seem like that's pretty reasonable stuff for us to expect with the people that we're talking to. Now, one of the other things that Grice came up with as he went through this was the fact that sometimes we purposefully violate these maxims. We purposefully choose to miss one or more of the four rules. We do it for lots of different purposes. We'll see some examples that we might talk about. But this is called flouting the maxim. And flouting gives rise to implicature. This is where we really have to pay attention to what the speaker is implying, because if he flaunts or if he flouts the maxim, the speaker is probably trying to tell us something that isn't buried in the words. Okay? We have to really look at what the speaker implies. So we might take an example like Bill isn't here. Okay, Bill isn't here. Pretty straightforward. Somebody says he has a cold. There's kind of some relevance there or some relationship. It's basically, though, telling us how he is, not where he is. And essentially, it's another implication of we're implying that he's not here, we're agreeing. It doesn't seem to relate, but it does imply a reason for why Bill isn't here. So that might be a relevance factor. Quality, be true. Person A says Toronto is in Michigan. Person B says, sure it is. And New York is in Canada, I suppose. Why would somebody say that? Now, the first person probably just made the mistake and said Toronto is in Michigan, because it's not very far away. But person B doesn't seem to be doing it by accident. What is person B trying to do? He's dealing with or flouting the quality maxim because he's not telling us something true. What is he doing? If you were person A, well, how would you feel when person B said that? Jen, you look this direction first, so we'll call on you. What do you think is going on here?
The person would be kind of embarrassed because they didn't realize something was on mission.
Okay, so they might be a little embarrassed. Why would they? Okay, so, but how does the person B's answer cause them embarrassment? He's being sarcastic, he's making fun of you. So basically here he's going out there and his person B is specifically gone out and not said the truth, knowingly not telling the truth. And he's using it for sarcasm, he's using it to embarrass you. Depending upon who the person is that does that to you, you might feel bad. You might be embarrassed. Otherwise, oh, you might just start laughing if it's one of your friends, right? But if it was your boss or somebody important, oh man, that could be a problem. This is one of my favorites. Person A says, Joe is a real jerk, don't you think? A real jerk. And the other person says, hey, how about those Cubs? Why? It's not relevant. Joe may be a Cub fan, but the fact that he's a real jerk has nothing to do with how the Cubs are doing this year. What's going on? What do you think? When would you ever be able to use that?
To take, to bring attention away from Joe.
Okay, yes. Why might you want to do that? I bet you've done this in the past. Sitting in a lunchroom, somebody says something about somebody else that isn't very kind. You try to change the subject. Why? Joe just walked in. So before you get yourself in real trouble, or your friend lets you get yourself in real trouble, changes the subject so we don't continue down that road. Or maybe, and my wife had a friend who was always complaining about everybody else. Everybody was terrible. Everybody treated her badly. My wife knew that really wasn't the case. And she would just from time to time say, I don't want to hear that about other people. That's not true. And it's not nice, and don't do it. So sometimes you've got a good reason to change the subject. Maybe you just don't want to hear somebody be negative about something. Change the subject. Maybe you're a kid and your parents want to talk to you about something you don't want to talk about. Hey, that's a good time to change the subject. I used to get away with it. 40 years, 46 years being married, I don't get away with it. But I used to. Now, here's another one. This one is, here are two examples of kind of flouting quantity. I heard a rumor that you have two jobs, you outsource one to another country, you keep the difference. And the guy says, that's crazy. I assure you I don't have two. You probably wouldn't emphasize two because that would give it away. But in fact, he should say, well, I don't have two, I got three, or I got 10, or whatever. In fact, is it more than two? Well, that's a different conversation. Trying to bury the information is something that happens all the time. And we do it. I bet you do it. I certainly have been known to do it. And I've watched other people do it. Here's another one. What's wrong with Dad's parents, Mom? Nothing. There. Kind and warm, thoughtful, charming, giving, helpful, loving. No one says that many nice things about someone unless they actually hate them. Gentle, funny, attractive, and on she goes. Right? So in an effort to be unlike that friend of my wife's who says negative things for whatever reason, she's trying to bury that negativity somewhere. This would be, she's given way too much information. And in addition to being quantity, it's probably also a quality issue. And then finally, there's the manner. Be clear, be brief, be unambiguous. And so somebody says, I hear you went to the opera last night. How was the lead singer? Well, he produced some sounds corresponding somewhat to the aria in Rigoletto, if there is an aria in Rigoletto. What's he done? He's tried to confuse things and not just come out and say, the singer wasn't very good. He uses exaggeration and sarcasm to say how bad he is. Now, all of these things, I bet, are things you've run into in the past. Like I said, you've probably done in the past. But the idea of we've got certain rules and we need to follow those rules. And it's probably quite culturally specific when somebody violates those rules and we still have to try to understand what they're saying. And so for English language learners, that can be real troublesome. It's one of the reasons why we really need to help our students understand this implicature and inference from what people are saying. Okay, so let's take a quick look at exercise A. It had some examples. Some of them were comical and some weren't. And as we go through these, let's be thinking about Grice's maxims. Now, I'll ask you what you think on this one. In the movie The Doctor, an orderly's wheeling a patient down the hallway on a gurney. The patient is really naked, nearly naked, except for a single sheet draped over him. And he looks up at the orderly and says, "Do you think you could get me a thinner sheet?" I'm not sure everybody can see through this one. Well, that's probably not really what he wanted. What did he really want? Wanted something thicker so that people couldn't see through it. Which one of the maxims do you think is being violated here? What do you think? Diana, what do you think? Which one? Quality? I'll go back. Is it quality? Is it quantity? Is it, let's see, got this way. There we go. Is it quantity? Is he saying too much? Quality, is he saying something that isn't true? Is it relation because it's not relevant? Or is it manner because it's ambiguous? Quality, because he is not asking for a thinner sheet, right? Therefore, he has actually got a quantity problem. I'm sorry, did you say quantity or quality? Quality, good, that's the one I meant to say. Because he's saying something that's untruthful. For what reason? Why would he do that? Sarcasm. Nah, that's as good an answer as any. Just trying to be funny. Assume, number 2, that you're teaching a course. You'll all be doing this before too long. And a fellow instructor approaches you after you have graded a test and asks, "How did Mr. Jones do?" And you respond with, "Well, he wrote something down for every question." Kendra, you looked up first. What do you think that is? So you got to be careful. What do you think? Is it going to be quantity? Because he said too much or too little? Is it quality? He's lying? Did he say something irrelevant? Or is he being ambiguous? What do you think? Quality. Did he say something that's untrue? No? It could be. I mean, I look at these and I go, it's kind of hard sometimes to pick out which one of the maxims is being flouted because oftentimes it's more than one. The author wants you to think about it in terms of quantity. Did he say too much? Yes, he said too much by saying, yeah, well, he wrote something for every answer. But did he give you all the information to say, yes, he did well, or no, he did poorly? So I think in this particular case, we're probably looking at quantity. And manner? Okay. And because he's being not clear? Okay. I could agree with that too. I think, like I said, a lot of these kind of run together. But manner would be another good one. So you could get in there and say, he's just not being straightforward. What did he mean by it? Did he mean Jones did well? No, he used an Armour's corollary, and he's given too many words for a negative answer. All right. So we have a quantity. We've got a quality because I don't know about quality, but I do know quantity is certainly there, and manner is there, and relation. I think he's relevant, but he didn't really change the subject. How about on 3? You ask a friend, do you know where Billy Bob is? And the friend responds with, well, he didn't meet me for lunch like he was supposed to. Which one of the problems do you think this one is? Relation, because he's kind of not saying where he is. He's just saying what he didn't do sometime in the past, right? So it's kind of irrelevant. And what does it mean? He doesn't know. Where is Billy Bob? Anybody ever been to Billy Bob's? Fort Worth, Texas, down in the stockyard. It's a great place. Okay. There'll be something for your bucket list. All right, number 4. In each of the exchanges below, the italicized phrase indicates that the second speaker is trying to avoid violating a maxim. Name the maxim. What can I get you? I'll have a chef salad. Oh, by the way, is there a post office nearby? Ariana, what do you think?
Relation.
Relation. What does a post office nearby have to do with a chef salad? Not a whole lot, but it's the kind of thing that happens all the time, right? How about in B? What happened during your interview today? Well, to make a long story short, they didn't hire me.
It was number 4.
Yeah, number 4B.
I said 4.
Quantity, me too. Because let's see, 4B, quantity. Because what's in there that's not necessary? Well, to make a long story short, you don't need that. All you have to say is I didn't get hired. That's what the answer would really normally be. All right, Gretchen is married, has 2 children, ages 7 and 4. In a conversation about her father-in-law, held in the presence of her children, without cuss words probably, she referred to her father-in-law as the 1st generation and to her children as the 3rd generation. Geez, where did we leave off? Oh, Ashley, what do you think? Quantity might be a possibility. There's another possibility too. But I would agree. That's not the author's answer, but I could certainly agree. What else? Well, I don't think she's saying anything false necessarily. We don't see anything there. I think it's probably manner. She's being very ambiguous and unclear about who she's talking about by calling the 1st generation and the 3rd generation. 4-year-olds and 7-year-olds aren't likely to pull that one apart. So what is the implicature raised? What do you think she's trying to say? Was she saying good things? You think so? She's calling him old. I know a lot about these old. Okay, who wants to be old? But I don't think she's being complimentary. If she's being complimentary, she would just say my father-in-law or my kids. Instead, she's burying it in something so that the kids won't understand what she's doing. All right, let's see. That was number 5. Number 6A. Do you want some dessert? The birds have wings. Is the Pope Catholic? What else do we say? Oh, there's other ones they're not saying. Relation, because of course he wants it, but he isn't saying anything that says just yes. He starts talking about something completely different. Don't you think John is a nice guy? Arpod, this is your big chance for extra points. Don't you think John is a nice guy? And Susan says, yes, he's about as sensitive as the killer of the hunt. Relation? Perhaps. Wouldn't be my first thought, but perhaps it because now you start talking about somebody totally different. So that could certainly be relation, right? What else? Quality? Yeah, that's another one. Although he may really be as sensitive as the killer of the hunt, so it still might be true. Maybe, but quantity would possibly be another one, right? He's saying a lot more than is really necessary. John says, who was the man I saw you with yesterday? And Lupe says, that was just someone. Quantity, why? Yeah, it's supposed to be informative, and she's not informing, right? She's just trying to bury it under somebody. What is she probably trying to say? Oh, very good. You'd be less polite and just say it's none of your business. Okay, we could do that. Let's see. And then, could I have your name? Yes, it's KATHRYNRILEY. Christina, what do you think? Manner certainly could be one. And quantity, could she just have said Catherine Riley? Okay, so Catherine Riley, why do you think she spelled it out like that? Oh, well, okay, so sometimes maybe somebody doesn't know how to spell it, but there's another reason. Several ways of spelling those, right? We got Catherine with an K and an E at the end.
Oh, it's like to be.
Yes, there you go. So everybody throws in an H and it's probably not supposed to be there. Okay.
Oh, okay. And my daughter will say, Mommy, why do you know they all have for your name?
All right, so I think it's manner and I think quantity plays into that because manner probably because there's just multiple spellings. Now let's take number 7, Cynthia. I'm just emphasizing name, correct name today. If the same exchange happened and the guy's name was Frank Parker and he spelled it out, what do you think the message is that Frank Parker would be sending? The employee didn't what? Yes, but it sounds like, I mean, Frank, there's only one way to do it. Parker, there's only one way to do it. If you ask me how to spell Frank Parker, you must not be very smart. I would think that if he sat there and did that, it would probably let the other guy feel like, he thinks I'm not smart. Not true necessarily with English language learners, however, correct? Because English just is spelled so weird, it's ridiculous. And as soon as you find a rule, you find it violated. Okay, so that takes care of that. So keep this in mind. It's really kind of an interesting concept. Watch what happens when somebody gives you an irrelevant answer or an answer that is hard to understand or something that's really long that doesn't need to be. What are they really trying to communicate? All right, I've been through this. The last topic of the day, Speech Act theory. And with this, I'm just going to give you a couple of ideas. We're not going to, it's not going to be on the test. You know, I gave you the practice exam, and there's going to be one question about pragmatic on that. And if you've done the study guide, you should really have the answer. And if you remember the word context and pragmatics, you can't go wrong. However, we do have this Speech Act theory idea where we do things with utterances, or we do things with the words that we say. Now, normally this is kind of broken down into 3 parts. There is a locutionary act. And this is, as I talked about before, this is what is spoken. It is just the simple saying of the utterance or the sentence. My name is John. There's not too much to that, but it's just a locutionary act that says, my name is John. Now, let's say my name is John Armour, spelled A-R-M-O-U-R. What do you think the illocutionary act is supposed to be? Now, the locutionary act was me spelling out my name or saying my name. We get down to the illocutionary act. What does the speaker do by speaking a sentence? What do you think? I'm basically telling him to write my name down, I think, because otherwise I never would have spelled it out. There might be better examples than that one, but we've got the actual saying of it, and then we've got the idea of what does it do. And that kind of wraps up into the perlocutionary act. I would expect that person to actually be affected by my utterance and probably write my name down. But the kinds of things that we do with language is kind of buried in this list of language functions here. We have a representative function, which is basically just giving information. It's not trying to make you do anything. So maybe my saying, my name is John Armour would just be representative. By the time you get to spelling it out, maybe I'm looking for something different, like you should write this down. But describing state of affairs, we could just state information, we could deny information, we could assert, and so forth. Essentially, it's just basically passing on information. The opposite side of that is going to be questions where we're asking for information. We do that all the time. There's also this idea of directive. These are commands. This is where I tell you, get out. Or if I'm sitting in your living room and I say it's cold in here, I'm telling you to turn up the heat. However, it's basically a directive in that we are commanding or trying to get somebody else to do something. Then there are the times when we promise to do things. This is kind of the commissive function where we commit to doing something for somebody. Sometimes we commit other people to do it, but it's committing the speaker or others, largely wrapped around things like promises and obligations. And they might start off with, I will take you to the restaurant. I will give you an A, whatever. Promises made by the speaker. We can also have expressive things where we tend to just express our emotions like, I'm sorry, or congratulations, or thank you, I appreciate this. That's another difference. That's different than just saying, I'm sorry, or saying thank you. It's kind of expressing our emotions. And then finally, we've got this idea of declaration. I think it's probably one of the fewer ones. One of the less likely ones, but things like I commission you the USS Northeastern, or I pronounce you man and wife, or I pronounce you guilty and give you 2 to 4 in the state pen. Those would be declarations. You're changing the status of something, changing the status of 2 people into being one married unit, taking somebody and saying you're now going to prison. Or this boat is now named this. So these are some ideas. Now, if you haven't had 414 yet, you'll run into something along those lines later on. But recognize that we've got to really recognize we do things, we do stuff by the words that we say. And so basically, it's just these 3 things. I suspect you'll walk out and forget them. At least you'll have been introduced to.
What is the ill dictionary really mean in that?
Purpose. Okay. Let's take the declaration really as a good example. The locution is, you are guilty. The Illocutionary Act is the declaration of that. Now you've changed the status from being not guilty to guilty. That's the function. That's what's actually happened based on your words. In the case of expressive, I'm sorry, you're actually out there expressing your feelings. So the Illocutionary Act would be the expression of your emotions. Okay. That's kind of the way it works. So you've got what's spoken, you've got what is said and done, and then you've got an effect at the end that's hopefully the one that you want. Sometimes the effect is wrong, right? Or it's a mistake. All right, let's take a quick look at B. Exercise B is on page 9. We're just going to look at a few of these, try to classify which kind of illocutionary acts we're talking about. Where did I leave off? Barely I left off, yeah. A child says to her playmate, happy birthday. Yes, right. It's kind of an emotion. She's not saying, hey, it's your birthday. It's not representative. And she's not telling you you have to have a birthday today. It's basically just expressing emotion. A doctor says to a patient, I advise you to stop smoking. I advise you to stop smoking. Simple. What do you think? I'm sorry? Well, no, because commissive would be somebody saying, I will stop smoking. What does the doctor really mean by saying, I advise you to stop smoking? Huh? Declaration? Maybe, but I think in this particular case, it is primarily a directive, right? Because he's basically telling you to stop smoking. Let's see. Lorraine, one secretary says to another, my daughter's getting married in August. I agree with that. How about a pencil? Nope, sorry, it's a priest. A priest says over an infant, I baptize you in the name of declaration. I agree with that. A mother says to her daughter, who washed the dishes? Good fairy, certainly wasn't a daughter, right? Right. Jen, a passerby says to a motorist with a flat tire, let me help you with that. What do you think? Let me help you with that.
Director.
I don't, oh, that could be if you were going to say it. If you don't, I'm going to beat you up. That's a possibility, I suppose. I don't think so. It's not really changing the status of anything. I think it's kind of commissive. He's committing himself to help. If I say, let me help you with that, and you say, okay, and then I walk away, that'd seem rather weird. One friend says to another, I swear I won't see Martha again. I swear I won't see Martha again. Commissive, because that's basically supposed to be a promise. A parent says to her child, I forbid you to leave your room. I forbid you.
Directive.
Yeah, he's giving him an order. Do not leave. A man says to a friend, what time is it? Question. You got the easy one. Okay, Ashley. I don't know. A buyer says to a seller, I agree to your terms. It's commissive because now you basically agreed to do a promise to buy it, right? Now, in the movie, The Lonely Passion of Judith Hearn. Anybody seen that one? Anybody want to see it? Okay. James Madden is telling Judith how he has been wronged by his daughter. Wah, wah. Following exchange occurs, Judith says, oh, I'm sorry. And James says, you don't have to be sorry. You didn't do anything. What has occurred here? What's happened? I mean, this happens a lot across cultures. People from America will tell people, oh, your father died. Oh, I'm so sorry. Why? You didn't do anything. Why is it? What can sorry mean? It could be a couple of different things. I'm sorry? Yes, I think it would be definitely expressive, but why would it generate any confusion? You looked at me, so I know you've got the answer. Are you apologizing? You might apologize with I'm sorry, right? What else might you do with I'm sorry? Think. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that happened to you. It's kind of an expressive. It's still expressive. Could be an apology, but in this case, an apology doesn't work because you didn't kill the person. However, oh, wait a minute. In this case, it was, you didn't say what the daughter said to her father. but you are expressing, huh? You guys. Condolences, yes, which is kind of a statement of sympathy. And that, so we use that as a sympathy statement all the time when somebody dies. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. That's great in America, right? Because everybody knows what it is. But if you go to someplace else, what do they say in Mexico? Pésame mucho. Is that right? Huh? What is it? Oh, lo siento. Somebody else told me pésame mucho, but it was like he was from. You what? Okay, there you go. So you see, my Spanish isn't too good, but my English be good. Kind of. All right. I am now done. I thank you for coming all the time. I thank you for all your hard work. I look forward to you doing well on the final because I gave you the study guide to practice. And I'm going to stay here until no one else is in the room or 1:30, whichever comes first. They're not really. I mean, particularly, look at this would be one of those pragmatic examples that I gave you, right? If I say it's hot in here, well, this one's a little more direct, right? It's turn the heat. But if I were to say it's hot in here, that's very different than it's hot out here. You could do something about one and not about the other. Or, let's see. Good one. You might ask a dumb question. You ever heard of this no such thing as a dumb question? It's a lot. It's a lot. I've asked lots of dumb questions. But sometimes you ask a dumb question to make a point, right? That would be a pragmatic kind of a thing as well. So you can use them. They all kind of come in there. Not me. Yes, that would get you back to the whole middle picture thing, pragmatic, because you said something that you really didn't mean. So you have to be argument change. Yep. Get everybody? Oh, we didn't get you. We didn't get you the other day. I had to put your name on there too. I had to write it. Oh man. Maybe it is this. It's like and you weren't the only one. So you don't have to feel bad.
Oh, Grace's Maxim.
Yeah.
It's only, I don't even think what's the lesson.
Well, I'm not sure that, I think it's probably largely Western, but I think other cultures.